Hey everyone, welcome to Wellness Within Integrative Healing. I'm Kristen, founder of Wellness Within and certified integrative healing practitioner. So today I want to dig into liver detoxification that goes way beyond a weekend cleanse or a week-long detox. We are looking at supporting the liver long term. We are looking at repairing detoxification pathways and just getting back to overall health as far as the liver is concerned, and that is concerned with a lot. The liver has a lot of function in our overall health, a lot of influence in our health. So, before we get started, just remember I'm not a doctor. I don't diagnose or treat disease. Anything that you hear is for informational purposes. So, make sure you talk with your doctor before adding in any supplements or changing diet or adding anything to your regimen. Um, so, there are three phases to liver detox. Phase one is where toxins are broken down and prepared to go over to phase two. That is the cytochrome P450 enzymes that do a lot of the work in phase one. So this is one of the reasons that we look at genetics. We can look at the CYP and see if there are any mutations on there. If there is one mutation, you can expect that to be functioning about 30% slower. If there are two mutations, you're looking at 60 to 70%. So it's definitely important to know if those are playing a role in any health issues or symptoms. So when toxins or substances pass through phase one, they are sometimes safe and ready to leave the body right then and there. Sometimes they become more toxic and need to go over to phase two to be further processed before they leave the body. So when someone has those mutations on the CYP, then we see things like multiple food and chemical sensitivities. If a slow phase one is playing a role, then the things that your body is being exposed to, your body is like, hold up, I can't even process what I have going on right now. And that's where you get those sensitivities. If you have no mutations on your CYP and it's moving too quickly, then we will see things like skin issues, inflammation, and histamine response. Histamine is a really big one there. And that's where it's just moving too quickly. And those more toxic toxins are just backing up and waiting to either be processed by phase two, or your body is just shoving it out through the skin, moving things into the joints. That's where you're going to have some of those inflammation systems or symptoms. So when phase one is moving too slowly, we can supplement to speed it up. When phase one is moving too quickly, we can temporarily slow it down while we work to repair detox pathways in phase two. So there are 7 pathways that we look at in phase two: sulfation, glucuronidation, acetylation, glutathione conjugation, methylation, sulfoxidation, and amino acid conjugation. So the first one, sulfation, is where we are adding a sulfate molecule to a toxin so that it can be detoxified. So sulfation detoxifies things like adrenal hormone, thyroid hormones, a lot of prescription drugs, food additives, neurotransmitters, cortisol, food dyes. I don't know if I said food dyes. But symptoms of dysfunction in sulfation include sensitivities to salicylates, food colorings, aspirins, and phenols. So a person can have issues with sulfation because intestinal bacteria is dominating that pathway, or there can be a problem back at sulfoxidation, which is where the sulfur in our food is converted into the sulfate that is used in this pathway. So we look at the Dutch test when we're going through our testing, and that's where we can see indications of issues with sulfations. So sulfur-rich foods or supplements can support sulfation, but we want to make sure there are no issues. We have no active CBS or MTHFR-A1298C mutations. And we also want to make sure that someone does not have hydrogen sulfide SIBO, or else we're just going to be feeding another fire while we're working on this one. The next pathway, glucuronidation, combines glucuronic acid, which is made from glucose, with a toxin or substance to detoxify it. So it is one of the many reasons that the body should not be deprived completely of glucose. Secondary or backup pathway to glycination and sulfation. So it'll pick up the slack when those pathways are overwhelmed or they are damaged. It helps to detoxify things like pollutants, fatty acids, vitamin A, bile acids, bilirubin, benzos, aspartame, alcohol, and adrenal hormones. So oxidative damage from free radicals are often the cause of damage to this pathway. If you have heard of Gilbert syndrome, those people have higher levels of bilirubin and usually have one or two mutations on their UDPGT enzyme, which is the enzyme responsible for glucuronidation. So we can look there. And we can also look at bilirubin levels as any indication that we're having issues with glucuronidation. So we can supplement to increase the activity of that enzyme. Acetylation is the next one. That uses the enzyme N-acetyltransferase. So we look at the NAT mutations when we're running genetics. Acetylation detoxifies things like sulfa drugs, antibiotics, histamine, serotonin, tobacco smoke, exhaust fumes. So problems arise when there's dysfunction in the acetylation pathway because of decreased bile production. We want to add in support for bile flow there, and we want to reduce toxin exposure while we are working to repair that pathway. The glutathione conjugation pathway is a major detox pathway. It uses glutathione, which is a very powerful antioxidant. I'm sure you've probably heard of that one. It detoxifies things like herbicides and fungicides and heavy metals. Exposure to toxins as well as smoking, and especially smoking, deplete the body of glutathione. It's busy detoxifying. Smoking's kind of a double whammy because the body needs it to detoxify from the nicotine as well as to clean up free radicals that are produced by the toxins in the smoke. So for the body to produce glutathione, we need to make sure we are supporting with things like magnesium, selenium, vitamin B2, zinc. Glutathione itself is made up of cysteine, glutamic acid, and glycine. So making sure that we're absorbing our protein is very important. Making sure that we are supporting with nutrients is very important. We can obtain those from fresh fruits and vegetables, cruciferous vegetables especially, but then again, make sure to watch for those contraindications using the large amounts of sulfur that I mentioned previously, the CBS and MTHFR mutations or hydrogen sulfide SIBO. Vitamin C is important in there. We want to make sure we're careful if we're supplementing large amounts of ascorbic acid, just to make sure that there is no high copper, because that can create another issue in itself. I think you're starting to see the importance of testing to know what we should be supplementing with when. So all these things that are supposed to be good are not necessarily always beneficial to every person. Off that rabbit trail, back on to glutathione conjugation. We can support the production of glutathione with coffee enemas. Those have been shown to raise levels significantly. We see markers of the glutathione levels on the organic acids test that we run in the beginning, and we can see it again on the organic acids section of the Dutch test that we run at the beginning of phase 1. So methylation is the next pathway in phase 2, and that attaches a methyl group to a toxin. It detoxes things like steroid hormones, noradrenaline, adrenaline, dopamine, melatonin, histamine, serotonin, sulfites, among other toxins. Methylation plays a really big role in turning on and off gene mutations. It inactivates viruses as well as cancer cells. So methylation is definitely one that we want to make sure that we're supporting. On top of all of them. So if we were going to look at a diagram of the methylation cycle, it would show, really getting into the nerdy stuff here, but it would show that methionine is converted into SAMe, and that donates a methyl group. That's where methylation occurs, and what's left over is converted into homocysteine. So homocysteine can take two routes. It can go down transsulfuration using the CBS, so recycled back into methionine after going through this side of the cycle, which is the MTHFR, the MTR, or it can cut back up through the shortcut, the BHMT. So we want to make sure that all the pathways in the methylation cycle are supported. We do not want to be either having high levels or low levels of homocysteine. So we'll look at homocysteine to kind of get an idea of what is going on with the genes that are involved in methylation. So it uses a lot of B vitamins, but the type of B vitamin is going to be very dependent on a person's genetics. So sulfoxidation, next, it's the one I mentioned previously. Dietary sulfur is converted into the sulfate. It's also where sulfites that are used in preservatives in a lot of foods are detoxifying. So when a diet is high in sulfites in the processed foods, it's going to use up a lot of molybdenum and a lot of vitamin B1 because those two are necessary for the sulfite oxidase enzymes. Let's see, which ones didn't I cover yet? Amino acid conjugation. That attaches an amino acid to a substance to detoxify. So examples on that one, glycination uses glycine to detoxify. Toxin overload, like with a lot of these things, can really deplete glycine. Leaky gut, poor protein absorption, those can also contribute. Taurine. Taurine binds bile to excrete the toxins. Glutamine is needed for liver detoxification. Any form of stress can reduce glutamine levels. Arginine or ornithine, those are used in the urea cycle to detoxify ammonia. Just because these amino acids are needed doesn't mean we should automatically add them in. We want to look at other gene mutations. We want to make sure we're not, like I said, beating that fire elsewhere when we're trying to put out this one. People with alcoholic liver disorders, cancer, chronic arthritis, hypothyroidism, people that are exposed to a lot of chemicals at their jobs or however else in daily life, those people often have poorly functioning amino acid conjugation pathways and need extra support there. So it is our goal. We want to repair these pathways. Not always. Sometimes it's just basic nutrient deficiencies that can cause dysfunction in phase 2 detoxification. So it's always a good idea to keep your toxin exposure at a minimum, within reason, within a healthy level of avoiding toxins, not to an obsessive point where you're doing more damage from the anxiety than you are from the toxin exposure. And we're not wanting to put stress on the body, and we are trying to avoid stressing the liver, kind of making its job easier. So that covers phase 2. Phase 3, toxins from phase 1 and 2 leave the body here. So it happens when they're filtered through the kidneys, in the urine, through the bile in the stool, and it can also happen through the skin. So for sweating, infrared saunas are great. We really want to make sure we're supporting bile flow. That is essential in moving toxins and other broken down substances out of the liver. So we can support bile flow with things like coffee enemas, liver flushes, castor oil packs. Dandelion and sunflower lecithin also can support bile flow. So detox in the liver is definitely much more complicated than just a weekend cleanse or what type of flush can I do. So we want to dig in. We want to look at our bodies. We want to look at test results, and we want to see what's going on so that we can supplement in order to repair these things, in order to take stress off the body, in order to make sure that detox is running efficiently. In order to regain optimal health. And so we want to make sure the pathways are repaired and well supported before we push any type of detox. We don't want to further damage the body. We don't want to put more stress onto the body. Often people are talking about their die-off symptoms. Sometimes that is the body saying, I am not ready for that. You need to back up and you need to fix a couple of things before we start any kind of detox. And that's why we don't really, we don't start liver flushes and things like that until we are sure that things are really functioning, just to make sure that anything that we do stir up can leave the body. And that's why we don't start gut work until after all of phase 1, including the liver of the program, has been completed. So if you have any questions, let me know. I will be happy to answer them.